Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Dev Diary. So, I wasn't really following the recent r/place craze until it turned into some kind of weird measuring stick for internet personalities, which I found so absurd I turned it into a video game. So let's check out the code, starting with the player's main three variables, the only global variables used in this project. They should be pretty indicative of what we're going for. So moving over to the actual game code, we first have a bunch of variables. Most control the state and display of our game. Our target grid is generated and a starting hype level is set for both player and their CPU opponent. The first function is our setGrid function. It resizes the battle grid based on the argument provided and then sets the variable we'll need for the combat portion of our game. This includes followers, clout, and wager amounts for each participant. Then it rerolls the hype levels before initiating the battle. Our next function is a check function. This is a simple function that runs each frame, checking for full coverage. So the first participant to cover the grid entirely in their color wins, triggering the game over state. This function is run in conjunction with our third function, which is our general tick function. Not only does this constantly check for a winner, but it's also responsible for the population of our grid. Once the hype timer has reached its max value, the ticker chooses a random amount of followers to occupy a random grid cell with their respective color. The timer is then reset and repeated until a winner emerges. The final function for this project is a reset function, and it is called when a winner has been chosen. After a few seconds of displaying the results of the battle, the necessary variables are reset to allow the player to initiate another battle. And finally, a few buttons are generated using my button system for a pre-battle preparation state. It's during this state that the player can do multiple things. The first is to purchase followers using clout. The second is to purchase clout using ego. Options 3 and 4 change the amount of ego wagered in the upcoming battle. The fifth option begins the battle, and the final option changes the size of the battle grid, with a minimum of 3x3 and a maximum of 16x16. Then once a participant has won, the game over state is then triggered, and like mentioned earlier, goes through a short break before resetting everything to the prep phase. Now the draw event for this one is pretty simple. The battle grid is all that's drawn to the level. The draw GUI event is a bit more complicated as it houses, well, our HUD GUI for all states. The prep state provides data and buttons to make bets and to keep track of players' followers, clout, and ego. Using my button system also allowed for a nice little hover effect during the prep phase. And the battle phase is pretty straightforward, only displaying necessary info for both participants. And the game over state simply displays the winner in the middle of the screen. And that was all the code that was needed to bring this thing to life. Again, the prep screen is pretty straightforward. The player can purchase clout or followers with the necessary social currency. They can also change how much ego to wager in the upcoming battle, and of course the ability to cycle through grid sizes and the big ol' go button to get the battle started. Now, I'd be lying if I said this was in any way balanced. Battles can last anywhere from a second to 5 minutes based on the participant numbers. There is a speed up option which often helps with larger grids, but overall this was the game. Player wages their ego to combat an opponent doing the same, and if successful, their ego grows. That ego can then be traded for clout, which in turn can be traded for followers. And one could argue that these two should be reversed, but if I'm being honest, an accurate depiction wasn't a high priority. And while I'm being honest, I have to say that with a few tweaks, this could actually probably be something. For example, imagine instead of battling over pixels, this was some type of war for land, and there could even be power-ups or events that'll either help or hinder the participants. The balancing would definitely need tweaking, that's for sure, but overall I didn't hate this project as much as anticipated. The original idea of battling over pixels seems silly, and still does, but I do like the premise of taking on a role of some type of mad leader vying for land, and going so far as to risk that which is precious for domination. On second thought, as much as I enjoy the premise from a fun gameplay standpoint, perhaps this is something that we'll revisit when, things aren't so terrible in the world. Wow, this got dark real quick. Well, this looks like a good place for us to wrap up today's Dev Diary. So if you enjoyed today's entry, consider leaving a like. Be sure to also subscribe and hit that bell if you haven't already. And let me know what you think of my gamification of the r/place madness. Would you like to see it continue development? Probably, under better circumstances? Leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.